Bismillah and start. So welcome everybody to another episode from Sigma Signals. Sigma Signals is a platform where we bring the best designers, innovators from all over the world, sharing their knowledge, sharing their practices on how to design and build innovative solutions and organizations. We welcome today our partners from Treehouse, Adam Billing. Adam is a noun, I would say, for my humble opinion, is one of the leaders, I would say, in strategic design. Has worked with lots of international organizations like Sony, NBC, AstraZeneca, American Express, and is the founder of Treehouse and Sprintbase. I'm proud that to have Treehouse as a strategic partner for Sigma Innovation Engine. And hopefully we're going to bring your knowledge and practice to the region. Saudi's been going under an amazing transformation. We're bringing all of the innovators from all over the world, trying to share our vision, Vision 2030. One of the things that we're trying and aiming to do is building these bridges between Riyadh and all over the world, and this time with London, where Treehouse is based. So, Adam, I'm welcoming you to Sigma Signals. We're going to have a casual conversation today. Our target are the innovators, entrepreneurs, practitioners from all over the region, the Arab region. We're going to be translating all of this and editing it later on. So we'd love to start with an introduction about you. What's your story? How did you start? And a little bit about Treehouse as well.
Sure thing. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Been really looking forward to this, and thank you for the partnership in general. It's a pleasure working with you and your whole team there, and it's just extremely exciting the things that are happening in Saudi right now, and we're just thrilled to be a part of it. So, yeah, looking forward to our chat. But yeah, by way of introduction, I started doing design work kind of by dumb luck early on in my career. I was a young consultant working at Ernst & Young in the US back in the late 90s. And I got tapped by a partner who was working out in San Francisco, who was doing, some pretty wild stuff. They had this sort of collaborative innovation group forming where they were using something called the design shop methodology. And a lot of the things that are like common language, common terminology for everybody today. This stuff was pretty new, and it's kind of the rest is history. I went out there and I met, kind of all the folks out in like Palo Alto and Walnut Creek, and all those things were happening. And later on, got to know like the folks at IDEO, where sort of the godfathers of design thinking. And yeah, long story short, by fast forward to 2010, I made my way to the UK because of doing work with the University of Cambridge, actually, where I still teach on a lot of their sort of executive and leadership programs around innovation. But yeah, so I started Treehouse in 2010, and kind of been doing that work ever since. But all down to a fateful call from a partner in on the West Coast in the late 90s. The rest is history.
I think we shared that there was this transformative moment, right? So we come from different industries, but we fell in love with design, especially design thinking and bringing design to the business. And that inspired you to start Treehouse. So what does Treehouse do as a business?
Sure. I mean, we at our heart, we are an innovation consulting and training business. So the kind of work we do ranges from big strategic projects where any kind of organization, and you mentioned some that we work with, like places like Sony or Sky or AstraZeneca or Amazon. Basically, where an organization will have a challenge where it's getting out of that realm of the status quo, or they don't have the resources internally to challenge it or to tackle it, and they'll bring us in to help them with that. And that could be product design, service design, strategy design, and that is and that's kind of when you think about a innovation consultancy, it's that work. It's those projects where we come in and we sort of, bring our expertise from design researchers, facilitators, and bringing prototyping methods to get new stuff out into the world. Then the other side is the internal capability building. So when they no longer want to hire us to do that work, they we'll help them set up their own internal teams, and we've done that many times for all kinds of different organizations, even very risk-averse organizations like law firms. Like we helped DLA Piper set up their internal innovation function and scale that out so they could do that kind of work themselves. And then finally, it's the training when we're trying to take some of those mindsets and behaviors that are kind of indigenous to innovation teams and kind of cascade those out to the rest of the organization. So no matter what role people are in, they're able to sort of borrow from that world of innovation to do their job in a more kind of creative and adaptive and agile way. So that's basically what we do.
I lost you for a second, but I think we're good now.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. So, how is the flow going? Everything is okay?
Everything's great.
Oh, no, this is cool.
Oh, no, dude.
Nice.
Not just great. It's something.
That's amazing, Adam. So I want to jump now to the actual, I think in the business world, either in government innovation or in businesses in the private sector scaling, everybody's speaking about innovation. We're seeing as well now the challenges when it happens to the stock markets, the whole tariff wars that's happening, and it's affecting all economies. Even in Saudi as well has been affected over the past couple of weeks. My philosophy was always that organizations, whatever the size, whatever the industry, agnostically, should have that innovation engine inside, should have the capacity to navigate through those ambiguities, through financial challenges, and so on. And I think it always starts with the people, right? With the internal culture and scaling that. And today we want to deep dive into this particular aspect of innovation. People sometimes mistakenly think that innovation and design is the outcome, while it is the actual journey and the process, and it's a function that you actually practice on a daily basis. What's your perspective on this?
You've put that beautifully, and I think it's probably why we partner, because we see the world in the same way. But that's not always an easy thing to communicate. And one thing that we've been trying to do, when you say that innovation isn't necessarily the output, it's the experience, it's the things that we do. We talk about like mindsets and reflexes and behaviors that just you integrate into your everyday work and become just how you do things.
Yeah.
We've started talking about two distinct concepts. We talk about innovation 1 and innovation 2. Innovation 1 is what most people think of, which is people who are skilled in the tools and the processes of innovation with the aim of creating, revolutionary new products and services, breakthrough, new stuff, new innovations, right? But we also talk about a different kind of innovation, which is when we borrow some of those mindsets and reflexes and then integrate them into everybody else's role. So if you're in sales, if you are in, procurement, if you're in finance, like what we borrow from innovation, the world of innovation 1, dedicated innovation work, to, dig a bit deeper when we're having that sales call to uncover an unmet customer need, or, think creatively of how we solve a supply chain problem, not necessarily producing a new, revolutionary new way of doing procurement, but just in the moment when the whole organization starts to kind of adopt and integrate some of these things, that's where that agility, that responsiveness comes from at an organizational level. So, nice. And I think you need both, right? The innovation 1 folks who are doing that dedicated kind of the hard innovation work, but talk about the tariffs and those kind of predictable changes, the rest of the business has to have those reflexes, or you can't just rely on the innovation one. It has to be the innovation two, where the rest of the organization's responsive and able to pivot when those kind of things happen, which they seem to be happening more and more frequently these days.
I like this analogy of having like two wavelengths, right? So
Yeah.
two levels of innovation. But I think since everybody's speaking about it, right, it's easier said than done. Where do we start?
Where do we start? Gosh, well, I'd love to hear your answer to that.
And this actually leads me to another question, which is maybe the cultural differences across multiple, I would say, cultures. From my perspective, my humble opinion is that it always starts from the top.
Yes,
I
it
mean,
is.
it's not a bottom-up approach. Leaders should start the innovation agenda. It's their mandatory mandate, actually, to start pushing people, hiring the right people, putting the system and incentives. Otherwise, it won't happen by itself.
No, and that I mean, that was going to be my answer as well, because the thing that we've seen countless times, and it is horribly frustrating and disappointing when it happens,
Mhm.
is you have an organization where there is a push to bring in that kind of innovation culture. We're really trying to integrate these skills, there's different ways of doing things across the business.
Mm,
And we find that leadership, while they may have like signed the check or given the thumbs up,
exactly.
when they actually see these different practices happening in their organization, they go, whoa, 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 what's that? That's
Mm,
not what I'm expecting, and we have seen great initiatives lose momentum instantly because you haven't had top leadership really aligned behind what a commitment to innovation actually means in
mm,
terms of behavior change. And if you're one of those mid-level folks in an organization and you've tried something new,
mm.
different, and senior leadership hasn't supported you, or even worse, criticized you, you're never going to try it again. And we've seen, yeah, we've seen lots of good initiatives get stopped dead in their tracks. So 100%, it's got to start with leadership, and then it can't just start there. They got to stick with it, stay visible, supportive, modeling, rewarding the right
Uh,
behavior.
And I think this is a paradox as well, because there's a lot of ambiguities when it comes to innovation and design. And when it goes back to the boardrooms, I don't think it clicks yet with the I would say regular kinds of business language. People are not patient to see the outcomes, and maybe the same advocates, the same senior leaderships, would lose faith because they didn't want to be part of the process. They want to see the outcome as well. So they support in the beginning, but they don't trust the process. Is this something that you have been seeing, or?
Well, we've been doing this for a while,
Mm,
right? And you have too. Um, and there's a few pitfalls that we're so familiar with that we try to head them off at the pass whenever we can.
mm,
Um, One of them that you just referred to there is when you think about an innovation team that may have been given the green light from a senior leader to go explore some potential opportunity. Now, what we always insist now from the get-go is that senior leader is involved throughout the journey, not
nice.
part of the team, not out doing the research, but that there are checkpoints, that they see the initial insights, they see initial ideas, they see initial prototypes, they understand learning from experiments. So by the time you arrive at a solution, they've kind of been there and they get it and they know why.
Mm,
Um, it's in front of them. What happens far too often, and is a recipe for failure, is green light, team goes off, does this thing, shows up a couple months later, like ta-da!
mhm.
And the fact is, if it truly is innovative, which is new and unfamiliar, not like the status quo, for any leader, for any human being, sometimes it takes some time to recognize the value in that.
Exactly.
because you're seeing something like, whoa, yeah, that's not what I was expecting. Truth is, if it was what you were expecting, it wouldn't be innovative.
Mhm.
So the only way to kind of short circuit that is to bring them along, recognizing that they don't have much time. So being really strategic about how to just sort of make them part of the journey.
Involving them in the process depending on their, I would say, level. And I think this is the responsibility as well of the innovation and the multidisciplinary designers, the problem solvers as well. Um, I think sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, so as designers, we get involved in the practice of doing things. We think that people should understand what we're doing, while we have the responsibility as well to educate and involve people with us from different levels of the organization.
Yeah, that's you know, we work with a lot of our clients are in-house innovation leaders,
Mm.
so who run innovation teams, and some of them, we have a couple of telecom and media businesses where they've got big teams. I mean, big whopping teams where
Okay.
you've got you might have 100 people who are part of this department where there's all these design skills, innovation skills, and one of the things that we hear most frequently is there's an us and them like mentality emerges where we're the and both sides are guilty of this, and it's always the way these things go, right? So you've
Yeah.
got the cool designers who've got they've been enlightened, they're doing the cool thing, you know get annoyed when folks in the business don't work the way they do, think the way they do, or don't just immediately go along with the way they propose. And then on the other side, the business looks at this and it doesn't feel core. Not everything that comes out of it works. Feels like it gets measured on different but different metrics. And a huge job is how do you bring those two sides together? And it's a real challenge, and it's sometimes it's a kind of symptom of a successful in-house innovation team.
Mhm.
So they get to the point where they need to do that. But we've worked with some leaders who've been really successful, and you can imagine the kind of things they've done. It
Right.
is co-creation. It is getting people involved, taking it off the pedestal, and yeah, and just trying to integrate the things that are relevant to people across the business, you know, from that world that are that's useful for them.
Um, I think one of the important notions here is being okay with doing mistakes and failure, right?
Yeah,
And this is how we learn as individuals, as organizations.
yeah.
Can you share a story where something went really wrong in trying to implement and scale innovation practices and design practices within organizations?
So as far as I think, actually, I mean, they're. I mean, of course, all of our projects go flawlessly, so I wouldn't be able to draw from that. But what I will say, though, I mean, there are countless examples. Really,
Yeah.
we strangely we tend to work with some of the most risk averse industries and organizations out
Mm,
there.
mm,
I mean, our clients are media businesses and kind of creative industries, but the majority, if you really look at our client list, we work with a lot of law firms.
mm.
Um, we work with the Financial Conduct Authority, for example. We just did a big project with them. These industries where there's such a risk aversion built
Right.
into the culture because their whole industry is about eradicating risk.
Exactly. So
Uh,
banking, insurance, even government agencies as well, which is risk averse by nature,
yes,
sort of. This is the hardest, definitely.
yeah. So yeah, by nature, by design, and I mean there have been. I think the job there is you're never going to when you're doing innovation work,
Mm,
you're never going to eradicate risk from the process. I mean, you know that, right? Of course,
yeah,
it's if you're innovating, you're taking a step into the unknown, and the only thing you can do is systematically feel your way through, with each one of those steps being as risk controlled as possible.
yeah.
Uh, so, I mean, I can tell you, as far as yes, for a specific example, there was this happened to be funny enough, a media organization that we worked with, but were being presented to by a team that we were working with. We were training them. The kind of
Okay.
it was kind of a cross section of like kind of rising star executives, and trying to empower them to be a bit more innovative in their roles. And they flew in like the top dogs from this big business to hear these final pitches. And in the course of one of the pitches, one of the presenters who had just been kind of taught all this stuff and been equipped with these innovative practices was talking about their plan for experimenting. And right on the money, right? How do we he said, fail fast to succeed sooner. And the reaction he got from this senior fellow was, failure is not a word that has any place in this organization.
Yeah.
Failure is just another word for incompetence. And so,
Which sort of defeats the purpose, right? And
completely. And you can imagine if you're this, rising star who's presenting this concept, and that's the feedback you get from like a very well respected leader in the organization, you're not going to try that again. You're not going to put that view out there again. But where I think the tweak has to happen, I mean, we're going in a circle here. We're going right back to leadership being the number one place to start and the number one factor in making any of this work, is kind of redefining that failure concept to understand that we're not talking about we've spent a year building something, we released it on the market, and then it failed, and we're going to celebrate that. It's no, we did a really rough prototype that we spent nothing on. We found some assumptions, we tested them, learned where we were wrong, and made the tweaks while it was still super cheap and easy to fix. So you're de-risking it. But I think there's a huge gap between this kind of understanding around the language of failure and learning and where risk really comes from. And so, I mean, and it's amazing now, even how much of this is in sort of pop culture, how we will work with organizations that, especially in senior leadership roles, are not thinking that way, are not using that language, are not seeing that kind of vision.
I would assume that statement would definitely affect the culture. It's either people is going to be avoiding to show failure or trying to bypass by whatever they may, not to show the results or be honest about it. But people need as well a reason to believe in the process, trying to see what's in it for them. I would assume that what you're doing when it comes to capability building and training as well is one of the key tools to actually trying to infuse those concepts within an organization.
Yeah, 100%. And we always say that to really make it sink in, that you need kind of three things to be happening simultaneously. The first, surprise, is leadership engagement, really engage. The next is that just the skills, right? We need through training, equipping people with process tools, mindsets to do this kind of work and giving them something to practice on. And then the third are some real work results, like real work application. And that piece of it falls down sometimes, where people will have a training and it's lots of, Post-it notes and jazz hands. Everyone's excited and we all come away inspired, but they
don't apply it in real world scenarios and daily activities. Yeah.
And so what we found is when you're doing any kind of training initiative, when you've got that tail, that follow-on component where there is, and it's baked into the design of the experience, where they have to apply it to something real, and then very importantly, capture the impact of that work. That's the secret, for at least what we've found, because it doesn't mean that they've applied this and then they've created the next breakthrough product for their business. Yeah. Even if they've just tried some of these methods and got a better result from a great piece of customer feedback, or they did something more efficiently or more creatively with a team and it worked really well, or they learned something through testing that saved them some time. If you can capture those stories and then share those stories throughout the rest of the organization, you get this momentum starts
Yeah.
to build up, right? Because then people aren't just looking at stories from, Google or Apple and oh, look at how
Comes from
well.
inside.
It's like, this is us. This is
Yeah.
something we did. And then you build that trust, and then that cultural thing starts to happen. So engage leadership, skills and capabilities, and then that real work to get your stories. And then the stories become the fuel that keep it rolling. That's at least how we approach it. Does that resonate with the work that you do with your?
It does. It does. I mean, definitely having the ownership and the support and the executive buy-in. Usually, it's the gap between energetic staff who are looking and eager to be part of solving problems and innovating. Leadership, senior leadership are okay with it. And then there's a gap in the middle between the middle management as well, which is depending on the scale and the size of the organization. And I always say education is the best marketing tool for any philosophy or any kind of thinking that you need to infuse. Uh, but I'm wondering here if it's a cultural thing as well. Maybe the Saudi market and the European or the American market is different. What kind of skills that you're focusing on when it comes to how do you select the? I don't think everyone should be innovation in the innovation team or
No.
innovating. We need people who ensure that the machine is working.
Yeah.
We need people who are thinking about the future and solving problem and discovering opportunities. So what are the characteristics you usually in Lighthouse that you define, and what kind of skills that you try to build? And maybe I'm going to be validating that of also what we're doing here in Saudi.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. And I'll try to give you as concise of an answer as I can. I'll start with recognizing, going back to that idea of those two types of innovation one, innovation two. Innovation one, this is where you need specialists. This is where people are dedicated to the product being innovative, new, services, experiences, strategies, but it's innovation work.
Yeah.
Innovation two, the outcome is more sort of collective. It's a collective innovative output where everyone across the business is integrating just those elements, from the innovators' sort of set of behaviors and mindsets that help them do their job in a way that's more adaptive, more responsive to change,
Yeah.
and helps them kind of just as a company, as a culture, be more agile. And I think both of those require a different approach and a different type of person. So if you think about that innovation one, that's the innovation team, the innovation department,
The core team. Yeah.
that core innovation team who's tasked with this. So yeah, those are those are the people who either have the training, the experience, or just like that pure raw enthusiasm, who know they want to be there, who are inclined to work in that way, and I think a lot of so many of the best designers that I know never went to design school.
Yeah.
Were just the people that had the kind of natural
Energy. Yeah.
the energy, and I think those folks do tend to sort of self-select and can be recruited in. But compared to the rest of the organization, it's a smaller set. And when we train those people, we train those folks on process, on tools, as well as like mindsets, and how to do this work well. Because this is the work we do. It's like
Yeah.
training versions of ourselves inside of our clients. Now, the innovation two side, when you're looking for innovation as a result of collective behaviors, like all the different decisions and things that happen throughout the whole organization, resulting in that more innovative culture, that is a different thing. I think this has been one of the biggest mistakes that innovation trainers have made over the years, which is if you've got someone in finance, in procurement, who, as you say, is making the machine go, and want them spending their time developing the next new breakthrough product. We've got these guys over here doing that, right?
And having the balance, I think, between the one and twos.
You've got to have it, right?
Yeah.
And I think when we think about training, like the rest of the organization, well, we might, we'll show that there's an innovation process, But what we don't try to do is give them the process and the tools necessarily to go apply in the world of finance, because they're probably not going to have the opportunity to do a 3-step, 5-step, 6-step design thinking process the next time they have a challenge. They probably don't even have the time to like use an empathy map or something
Yes.
that we train those specialists on. But instead, we work on looking at the really granular behaviors that are kind of borrowed from that world of innovation that they can integrate. Like,
Mm.
for example, like if we always say, if you're conducting user research, one of the things you have to be able to do is fully immerse yourself in the experience of the user. Like when they're talking, you're listening. You're not thinking about your own point. You're not thinking about anything else, just their world. And that's a key behavior for innovation teams. If you borrow that and you bring it over to your sales department, for example, while we're not teaching them to be an innovator, we're teaching them that fundamental underlying behavior, which makes them a much better salesperson. It allows them not just to figure out what their customer is asking for, but
Mhm.
maybe they might need next, right? Which, when you start to compound that with lots of people embodying these kind of micro behaviors, not processes, not tools necessarily, that's when you can start to see that shift. But I think
Mindsets and behaviors.
mindset, it's behavior. You're pulling the behaviors and the mindsets to
Mhm.
help them do their current job better, not something new on top of their job, but hit their current OKRs faster, not a new set of OKRs necessarily. And I think that's the difference between the two. Are you dedicated to doing it, or are you borrowing from that world to do your job, no matter where it is in the business, better? Um, yeah, that's
I,
so
I
we're
like that notion because I think sometimes when you build that innovation lab or innovation function,
mhm.
there is this notion that maybe what we've been doing throughout the years has been wrong. And this immediately builds a barrier.
Yeah,
I think lots of organizations have been doing very well without the word innovation embedded before. And coming like, we know best, you're doing poorly, we are the only one who are innovating, that small
yeah,
room or function creates those barriers. But when we answer what's in it for them and how
yeah,
can we maybe multiply everything you've been doing
yes,
and empower you to actually do better. Now
yeah,
you're gonna have people on board the ship and supporting you.
yeah, yeah. I think that's exactly right. And I'd say be really curious. I mean, there's with Vision 2030
Yeah.
initiative, everything we're seeing, there seems like there's such a commitment to innovation, and it's, I mean, it's exciting, and it feels extremely empowering, and it feels like there's such a clear direction of travel. What's the impact culturally for sort of your average Saudi organization? Is that like trickling down into the DNA?
We're living in an amazing time for innovation. I remember like 10, 15 years ago, even those times when you speak about innovation or design, it was like, what are you speaking about? But honestly, over the past 8 years, we have been seeing lots of changes and transformation when it comes to social practices, economical infrastructures, and so on. And even though if we're not embedding the best practices, we're actually doing it. And I will always say this: it's not about having the best practice, it's about having the best fit. Saudi has a very strong vision, and over the past 7, 8 years, we have seen like a 180 degrees transformation in every aspect. What is the advantages that we have is that it is part of the mandate. So now every organization has the mandate to be being human centered, to being and to have like digital services usable for people, embedding the latest, I would say, practices and infrastructure and technologies. And what I really love about what we're having is it's a very youth and young country. 75% of the population is under the age of 30, 35.
Yeah.
Most are well educated. Most have been given the opportunity to lead organizations, to build startups. And that kind of energy is maybe sometimes is missing somewhere else. So there
Yes.
is
Like,
that enthusiasm and eagerness to build and to innovate. And we're trying to do is to tell people that there are ways, there are frameworks, there are tools, but somehow everybody's trying to innovate in their own way. And we're trying to capture those stories and sharing it with the world in such platforms. So we're doing like extremely radical innovations when it comes to building new cities like New York, something completely new. Nobody has tried to do it before. And we're doing small interventions when it comes to improving quality of life, to improve public policies and processes, and so on. So, as an outsider or somebody who's observing the scene, we're seeing all of that's happening when it comes to the creative economy, empowering people to use their creativity and build businesses out of it, either in cultural sectors, experiences, tourism, and so on. Or from when it comes to entrepreneurship and building scalable, I call it unicamels, not unicorns, Saudi versions of the next Apples and the next Googles. We're incentivizing everybody to relocate their companies and move to Saudi, bringing the talent and immigrating the creativity and design powers here to actually work in Saudi. So this is why it's a unique dynamic. It's fast paced. It's like you're always running. It's draining sometimes. um, there is this acceptance of try and error. Everybody is trying to. You have the leadership support. You have the young talent. You have the investment and the powers and the financial power. And I think that brings the right soil for innovation. Um, Even though, and this is what I like to emphasize on always. It doesn't have to be similar to the Silicon Valley or to the Chinese method of innovation or the Korean way of doing innovation. We have something unique, which is our economy is has been depending 99% on oil for the past
yep.
80 years. This year, it was the first time for Saudi to have 52% of the Saudi GDP coming from non-oil revenues. And this shows that we are accepting that. We're accepting different ways of businesses, different ways of, I would say, innovations. And we should try to embrace what has been happening all over the world and try to build our own frameworks and methodology. For example, I don't believe that design thinking today or design sprints work as a process completely 100% in the Saudi market as it works in the Silicon Valley, for example. So we had to actually redesign our own way of doing design sprints, our
What,
way of doing design thinking.
what would you say was the biggest difference? Was the biggest adaptation you had to make it fit?
Uh, Time and awareness. So I would say maybe design took enough time from the when David Kelly and IDEO started in Stanford, maybe in the 70s, until it became a mainstream in the 90s.
Hmm.
We only have been doing this for the past 8 or 10 years. So it's not
Yep.
fair to compare the awareness level. So we've been
Right.
working a lot when it comes to capability building, upskilling, open innovation programs, hackathons, and so on, trying to raise awareness. Yet once people are equipped, they started to tweak it or maybe jump some steps.
Mhm.
Because as well from the culture, we are empathetic by design. So we are extremely tribal, extremely. There is this nice book which is the culture map, which says we are a high context culture, while in the States, for example, it's a low context culture. So empathy and design research and patience, maybe to wait for a long time to get evidence based outcomes, is not there. So we love to jump into rolling up our sleeves and designing that. So if you're gonna tell me spend like 1 week or 2 weeks in doing research, we found that no, do research, ideate and prototype, do another kind of research to validate or to scale that, rather than having like sequential steps
Gotcha.
when it comes to design. But again, it's a try and error approach, right?
100%. 100%. And it's it reminds me of a project we did in Saudi a few years back with King Abdullah University of Science and Tech, KAUST.
KAUST.
Um, and it was one of the coolest projects and one of the greatest teams we've ever worked with. They were fabulous. Um, Effectively, the goal was to design a completely new smart home experience, something that was not just ultra sustainable, ultra secure, and convenient, and all the modern, you know, um, all the amazing features that you might think technologically, but something that really served the unique needs of people in that community, in that region. Um, and probably everybody who's watching this will be aware of KAUST, but if not, I mean, it is it's a incredible research, all postgraduate university. It's a closed community, so the
Yes.
people who are there, they live there, and and they had all these residences, so it was kind of a perfect place to kind of create this living sandbox. And the way we did it was and this is what made me think of it is we went out and we did loads of interviews, and we did it during COVID, which was crazy. So we had to do everything remote for that piece of it. But in a way, it was great because we were talking to people who were living there and trying to understand their current situation and where things could be better, or where improvements or ideas that they had. And it was so cool because they would just like pick up their thing, and they would sort of show us around, and they would
Gotcha.
they'd give us a real just in the home, kind of, it's like we were shadowing them. It was great. And we learned a lot using the same kind of ethnographic research methods I know you're familiar with.
Yeah.
But we did it as sort of multiple sprints. Like we would take that ideation, bring the community in for that too, prototyping, get their feedback on the testing. But yeah, it wasn't sort of a linear thing and then done. By the time we hit the first round of prototypes, it was like we were starting again because we knew they were just a first round. They became the conversation starters, like, or we'd call them like sacrificial concepts. Like, this is our first take. We're going to test these with you. We're going to have a new conversation, and we're going to start another cycle. And then we did the same thing again when we started bringing in tech vendors. Like, here's some mock-ups. We had some artists generate some really cool renderings of the top concepts. And then it was sort of moving through that again, but different set of stakeholders. And and it's funny. I had never really thought about how that project, kind of embodied the little multiple sprints
Yeah.
the way you described it. But maybe there is a Saudi way of running the design process that we just naturally fell into.
Yeah, and
But
I think that's part of the game, right? To adapt and to actually change the tools, not to get fixated around the process. And it's about bringing everybody together, and it's a team sport. I think this is what differentiate innovation and design as a practice is when people realize the power of co-creation and somehow changing whatever that works with different cultures.
yeah,
This is where the actual value happens, and
yeah,
not just to get stuck with the methodologies and the canvases and the tools.
absolutely, absolutely. And and I think to the as a plug here, as a blatant plug, not for us, but for the KAUST smart team, the innovation team at KAUST. And they were top notch, and they've continued that journey. They'll have people come stay in the house, and then get and they continue to prototype. They continue to evolve.
Yes.
They really think of it as a living laboratory, and it's in constantly trying out new technologies, bringing them in, adapting how drone delivery is going to work, how different types of just like zero emission heating and cooling and just all. It's really extraordinary. But it is that's one of those lucky moments where you've got that culture has taken root. That team just works that way, and the natural byproduct is ongoing, continuous creativity and continuous innovation, and they're going to be a lot more prepared when change happens.
Exactly.
Well, take it in stride and move through it. And it is again like, how can you borrow from a great team like the KAUST Smart team? What are those what's the magic dust that they've got that you can sprinkle a little bit on the rest of organizations who are also going to have to be, dealing with rapid change and unexpected stuff in their everyday life.
I love this example. I mean, especially with the project in KAUST, you have like this, as I mentioned, it's a living sandbox. It's
Yeah.
extremely diverse. You have the support, you have the people, you have the place. And once you put it in the context and you started to facilitate the process, you're going to see tangible outcomes and results that creates impact and value. Where do you think are we heading today, Adam, when it comes to, I mean, we're living in a definitely fast changing times. In just a couple of months, AI and agentic AI and everything has been there and everyone is using it. People are afraid that they're going to lose their jobs to AI. I
Yep.
think it's a powerful tool, right? Like any other tool. Yet, I'm not sure if I'm too old to learn everything when it comes to AI. It's changing extremely rapidly. It's eliminating some of the jobs that we are making a living out of. So when it comes to design research, for example, for ideation,
Yep.
even prototyping, now you can actually, we used to teach people how to do low fidelity prototypes. Now you can actually launch an MVP using Canva AI or using Figma or using OpenAI. So it's changing the core of being an innovation and design practitioner.
Yes.
Um, what are your thoughts about this?
Oh my. Um, so I mean, design is a knowledge business, right? It's a professional service, and professional services are, I think, the most open to disruption. I mean, this is not a new topic you're hearing first time hearing, but
It's really fragile. I mean,
I mean, so if you're a bricklayer or a pipe fitter, your world's not going to change a whole
yeah,
lot as a
yeah,
result of these technologies. If you're a lawyer, if you're a designer, you
yeah,
know you're if it's a knowledge business, then I think there's huge change. Now, I think the question, and it's still very much an open question, is to what extent is it an accelerator and an
mhm,
enhancer and will it transform the work that we do versus just replace?
yeah,
And and I mean, yes, what I think, I think that this isn't just wishful thinking. Um, it's just I think it's evidence based thinking that
yeah,
transformation is the more likely course. That it doesn't mean that there won't be jobs anymore.
mhm,
In these positions, it's just that the jobs are going to be fundamentally different. But I think what's tricky about that is it requires us to think about the future in a nonlinear way,
yeah,
where we're very used to imagining a kind of a linear path. We work with a guy named Richard Susskind, he's fabulous. He's a really well known futurist who talks about the professions. He uses in law quite a lot too. And he was talking about how when you think about the future of medicine and AI, because we all picture a bunch of robot surgeons who are doing these operations now, fully autonomously, these automatons, AI driven. No more surgeons. It's going to be this but realistically, what's probably a lot more likely are these technologies are going to be kind of aimed at preventative
yeah,
measures more so than just automating the way we do things today. the things that we do today might not be needed anymore because, he talks about like, it's more likely you're going to put the guardrail at the top of the cliff than focus on putting the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. Try to prevent the accident from happening to begin with. And I think that kind of metaphor sort of holds true for most industries, which is if we just think about the work that we do now and we assume it stays fixed, but AI increases, then yes, it goes away. But I think what's really going to happen as AI increases, our worlds and the work that we do is going to change alongside of it. New challenges come up, new opportunities come up, new possibilities using the technology, new roles that don't exist today. Tends to be more of the kind of trajectory in the past. But we'll see if that holds true. Maybe it is wishful thinking. But
I totally agree with you. I mean, I think it's about perspective. Any technology throughout history definitely eliminated jobs and created others.
yes,
We are in the business of solving problems and bringing solutions.
yeah,
I see AI as a booster. It can create that super designer, that super problem solver who could have reduced cost, done more. I would say I think also it's a time and being as quick, as rapid as possible. If organization needs faster, cheaper experiments, AI and design thinkers and
yeah,
innovators, when it comes together, can actually achieve that. And this is, I think, where we should let go of our maybe ego and our otherwise we're not innovating ourselves, right? We're not changing as the technology changes, as the business change. Maybe as service providers, and again, this is something I struggle with as a service provider. If
yeah,
I was gonna be hired like 2 years ago to build like an innovation team and spend like 6 months in a project, now the expectation should be you're gonna do this and maybe less time or cheaper cost. I'm not sure how, but we need to start adapting that in our day-to-day practices.
yeah. You know, it's. I'll tell you what we've seen. Just from inside Treehouse. I mean, we've been trying to stay ahead as much as we can. We've got a dedicated kind of Slack channel where those who are the most active pioneers are trying out everything as it hits the market. So we're all collectively being informed by those who are furthest out, on the edge, which is great. And when something seems to work, we all try to bring it in. We try it out on projects wherever appropriate. And I'll tell you what I mean. And it's changed the way I work profoundly. The whole team works differently now, and I think that's
Yeah.
pretty common. But one thing we're seeing, like if you think about will it be done faster?
Mhm.
What we're seeing isn't so much that like we're for like the design research phase.
Yeah.
We're not seeing necessarily that we're getting smaller. Like the time, like it was going to be 3 weeks, and now it's a week and a half.
Yeah.
We're kind of keeping it at 3 weeks,
Hmm.
but what comes out at the end of that 3 weeks is 6 months of work.
Yeah.
And I think so. That's it's become is a and it's funny. Like we haven't had any client yet say, actually, go ahead, shorten it down to a week, and give us what you could have given us in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
When their option is go ahead, take the 3 weeks, but give us something that is way beyond
I
what.
like this because you're focusing on the value. If I can amplify the insights
Yes.
or the outcomes of the research in particular, then it's not the timing issue anymore. It's about the outcome and the value of it.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I will say is I think the value of our work has been tangibly increased through our
Mhm.
use of AI. We haven't felt we haven't felt time pressure, cost pressure. We've really just been thrilled with the kind of things that we're able to deliver. I'll just give you a quick example. Last week, we did the coolest project. I mentioned that we work for the Financial Conduct Authority here in the UK, and we designed, so about 2 months or so to design this with them. It was called an Open Finance Policy Sprint. And Open Finance, and I was, before we started working with the FCA, I didn't understand what open finance really was. But it basically is, it's like open banking, which is a bit more fun, where you allow a third party provider to, like Revolut or something like that, to get access to your data in order to make transactions, through your bank with vendors, and it provides a certain level of value service to that, right? So open banking. Open finance is when you then take that same concept and extend it to your pension, to your mortgage, to your insurance policies, your entire financial existence.
Yeah.
You throw something like agentic AI into that mix, and now you've got the potential for services that can go, okay, let's take a look at your whole portfolio. Actually, this, what's currently sitting in your savings account should be actually deployed into your mortgage right now, or maybe sell some of the shares in order to, right. So that's a huge regulatory challenge, right? And without the regulator, those technologies won't come to fruition. And from the UK's point of view, it's really critical that they get this right. So what we did with them is we pulled together 100 people from like the Treasury, from law, from banks, obviously, from mortgage providers, from pension providers, from consumer interest groups, from top universities. Like, it was an unbelievable meeting of the minds. And we ran a 2-day, really intensive sprint to ultimately emerge with open finance policy prototypes. So, built by the community, what should the FCA's policy regulatory framework look like, for open finance? And we have done this kind of work with them before. We did something similar a couple of years ago. The output a couple of years ago was great. The output 2 weeks ago was extraordinary. And one of the biggest drivers, it wasn't that the Treehouse team just got infinitely smarter and more talented, or the FCA, they've got an amazing innovation team too, I should say. Their in-house innovators they're top notch. They really, really are. Digital Sandbox in particular, there's some incredible work there. But when we were pulling all this data, the thing that we had this time that we didn't last time, was AI. And it allowed us to do things from instantly visualizing ideas right there in the room. What does it look like? It looks like that. What
Give it a prompt, and let's design it, and let's see it, and let's make a decision. I mean,
we've heard from 30 different teams about what a data policy should be here. Where are the commonalities? Where are the differences? What are the key points? What might it mean?
nice.
And again, it's not a full cognitive offload by any means, right? That's not the goal. But what a provocation, and what an acceleration, and to be in a place where we're able to, to hand the FCA back something that they're going to take a look at it, and they're brilliant people, and they're going to internalize it, and then the policy that they develop will be the policy that they develop. But from what 2 days yielded 2 years ago compared to what 2 days can yield now in terms of just value, night and day. And we really felt it. It was just last week.
I love this, and this is exactly the message here. It's an amplifier. It's
Amen.
If we could have, if from a societal change or from an ecosystem macro level policy and interventions to touch points, products and services, if I could have make a better decision through AI today, by better visualization, by better ideation, then we can actually do more with less, and we can do more and create more value. And it's a paradigm shift in the way we do business and the way we facilitate our workshops and innovate.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm excited about it. I really am. I understand fear. I understand, disruption is it's an unsettling thing. But I think the overall impact of it is a net positive. I really do, especially in our world.
It is, it is. And just maybe to take that maybe to something you've been working on. So you just recently launched Sprintbase. How is that going to be integrated and disrupting our business?
So, so we've got a couple of things where AI is played heavily. So Sprintbase is a collaborative innovation platform, and the the goal there is we've tried to take as much of our sort of kind of innovation one knowledge, like process tools, especially for people who are creating in-house innovation teams and want to have sort of a unifying place to collaborate, but also a place to kind of pull best practices from and have kind of a unifying way of working.
Yeah.
And that's what Sprintbase is about. We did a nice link up with Mural, because Sprintbase has some similar features as like whiteboarding and things in there, but it also has a lot of tools and methods. And we partnered with Mural. They had a couple of their developers come in and sit with our developers for a while to create integration. So now you can have multiple Mural boards in an individual workspace, and you can do all kinds of neat stuff. But it's effectively it's a cool piece of tech for innovation collaboration. But we've got right around the corner. Oh, and it does have an AI capability. Really simple stuff where if you imagine a group of people, put lots of post-its up in a board, instant synthesis, very easy to use and adapt. And we're looking at more and more ways to build
So
AI.
it's an all-in-one, I would say, workshop and facilitation platform. It is powered by AI, I think, and it's customizable based on the needs. And
Yeah.
I haven't honestly tried it yet. I'm waiting for my free access.
Well, have to get you set up. Have to get you set up. And the other thing that to not to shamelessly plug, but we are really really excited about it.
Nice.
Is we've got a platform that's launching really this month. Around it started with an assessment based on the research of Jean Lidke. So Dr. Lidke, she's one of the world's most respected academics in the world of design thinking. She was the dean of the Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia in the U.S. and great author that recommends some amazing books. And she about a decade of her research resulted in a set of mindsets and behaviors that were demonstrated over and over through thousands of subjects in this research. That these 44 behaviors that are absolutely essential for effective innovation, and they really are the underlying things, those mindsets and behaviors. And what we realized is that we designed this assessment with her about 2 years ago, and we've been using it with innovation teams. But what we kept hearing over and over is that yes, while these behaviors and mindsets are absolutely essential for innovators, they're also really important to the rest of the organization.
Yeah.
And it was like sort of, why are we hearing this now more than before? And what we kind of realized is that innovation teams have always dealt with uncertainty. They've always dealt with rapid change. That's just what innovation is, right? But today, that environment has kind of bled into the rest.
The other departments and the rest of the organization.
Absolutely. And the thing that we hear more often from our clients than anything is no matter where you are in the business, you're constantly being hit with new technologies, right? Just talking about, you're having to learn and adopt new tools. You're having to figure out different ways of working. You have really unfamiliar challenges coming your way, stuff that you haven't had to deal with before, people that you haven't had to work with before to solve it. And all of these things are making some of those core underlying behaviors that have always been relevant for innovators suddenly much more relevant for the rest of the organization. So not necessarily the process an innovation team follows or the templates and tools and frameworks that they use, but those underlying behaviors. Those are the things that we're looking at new kind of creative ways to bring into organizations. And what we've developed so based on the I2 framework
Hmm.
that we've had, we've built a set of sort of micro learning nudges that
Nice.
are tailored to how someone does on that assessment. So if you take the assessment, you realize there's some sort of things around like visualizing an idea, or maybe it is connecting with users, or maybe it's like a reflection skill, being able to make sense, like form an insight from different pieces of data. Then when you take that, you are provided with a kind of customized set of these really quick, like 5 minutes. That's it. This is supposed to be done in the flow of work, like not something new. But and they're AI supported micro learning.
Yes.
And what's been so, again, amplifying about that, so all of the content is sort of the Treehouse content of how to develop these specific behaviors in that micro learning. But the speed at which we were able to develop these really visually compelling and interactive experiences, it would have taken our development team. We have we have 3 guys in a, well, one of those guys is a girl, but we have 3 people who are our core development team. And it would have taken them ages to create
Yes.
this. But with AI, it took a couple of months, and we've got an extremely robust system that is rolling out in a couple of weeks, as far as the full launch. And it's something that is, I mean, for us, it's extraordinarily exciting, and it's something we could have never done before, and we're looking forward to seeing how the market responds to it.
This is an amazing story, Adam. I mean, when it comes to using AI and changing your game, but the outcome as well as a solution, I would love to know more about that because I think you just solved for many leaders. You're giving them like that drone to map all of the characteristics and behaviors inside the organization and becoming like a creative matchmaker when it comes to building the right teams together and give them exactly what kind of micro nudges and knowledges that they need. You're actually doing, wow, this is amazing. I would love to know more about this.
Well, I will send that along afterwards, along with that free Sprintbase license. It's one of those.
Adam, honestly, I think if we're gonna keep talking, we'll not finish. And I enjoyed really our conversation. I really can't wait to have Treehouse and the entire team here in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, very soon, and doing something amazing together.
Yeah.
To wrap up our conversation, and to I want us to take this to the next level, and for our audience as well. How can they reach out to Treehouse? What is the channels? And how can they know more about you guys?
I mean, well, we're always just a Google away of treehouseinnovation.com. As far as social media, we're on LinkedIn. So you can just find me, Adam Billing, or Treehouse Innovation. We keep a pretty steady stream of interesting stuff. We try to share both the kind of successes and near misses and utter failures that we encounter along the way, and hope that they're valuable for people. So yeah, I would love to have everybody who's listening now be part of the conversation.
Adam, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for sharing the creative signals across the galaxy, inspiring our audience, sharing this, I mean, your thoughts, what you've been working on, and the future of design and innovation. I learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Oh,
And I look forward meeting you in person very soon.
I can't wait, and thank you so much. I mean, this has been an absolute pleasure, and I'm going to hold you to that invite for the visit, because I'm looking for an excuse. I would love to.
We'll have you in Riyadh very soon. Trust me.
Good. Yeah.
Really appreciate it, Adam. Have a wonderful day, and hope we're gonna meet soon, as we mentioned. And really grateful to have you.
I look forward to it. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Have a good one. Bye bye.